Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Erin and today is Friday, which means it is Book Review Friday once again. And today we have a book that was sent to me by the author, so I just wanted to let you guys know this was sent to me, but just because it was sent to me doesn't mean that I will not be giving you guys my full and honest thoughts. But today we are talking about Don't Trust Bees by Deep Arya, and I have actually reviewed the other two books in this. It's not really a series, it's more like a universe. So all the books take place in the same universe. So this book is not out yet. This actually comes out October 30th, so actually not far away at all. We're pretty close to October now because it's September 25th. Yeah, we're really close to October, so you don't have too long to wait. The other two books are The Overbridge and Broken Rock. I have reviews on both of those on my channel if you want to check them out. But this is the next book in this. Again, I keep wanting to say series, but it's more of a universe. This is a collection of short stories. There are 14 stories in here total. So I'm not going to give you a synopsis on all of them just because I feel like that's a little too overkill. I'm going to give you a short synopsis, and I mean very short synopsis, on my favorite stories, the ones that stood out to me the most, the ones that I had a connection with, that I felt some type of way about. So I will give you a short synopsis on those, but otherwise you'll have to read it for yourself if you want to hear about all the stories. So let's talk about the cover real quick. I think this is the prettiest cover. I love the colors so much. Again, I love when authors pick colors that aren't red and black. I know that those are like very typical colors for horror, and don't get me wrong, they look good most of the time, but there's something interesting about a horror book with some color into it. I just think that's very unique. I think the bee is scary. I don't like bees. We'll get into that in a little bit when I talk about the stories. But I just really like the cover. I think it's pretty. I think it's eye-catching. I like the colors. I think it's really gorgeous. So now that that's out of the way, let me get into our synopsis, kind of, sorta. Like I said, I'm only gonna do a synopsis for the stories that I loved. So like I said, this is a collection of short stories. There are 14 in total, and they all take place in the same universe as his other two books. But there is something else that ties all of these stories together, and that is bees. It sounds so funny, but it is. It's bees. The Strange Death of Elise is about a mysterious death surrounding a very wealthy 16-year-old girl. The Fragile Glass shows that sometimes family gatherings aren't all about quality time and love. Southwood Horrors is about a college professor that goes to a town where he isn't welcome to explore an old church. But a cold welcome isn't the only thing he walks into. The Tall Trees Don't Speak, where going for a walk in the forest isn't too scary until a storm falls upon you and brings something else with it. The Record of Action Allard. Imagine buying a record, an old record, a rare record, and finding out that playing music isn't all it does. Murder Within a Circle is about 5 members from a fan club for a deceased author who attempt a seance to try and communicate with her, but it doesn't go as planned. Lastly, Madame Agatha's Psychic Parlor. 3 friends go to a psychic to have their futures read, but they get more than they bargained for. So those were my favorite stories from the collection. I just wanted to kind of give you a taste about what the stories are about. I kind of picked ones that all are pretty different from each other, but also relate to each other pretty well. So I wanted you guys to have a sort of taste, but again, this is just kind of a book where you're gonna have to pick it up yourself if you want to read it because it's a collection of short stories. I'm not gonna go through all of the short stories and tell you exactly what happens because I just don't think that's very fun, and it kind of spoils the surprise factor of reading a collection of short stories, in my opinion. I think that's part of the fun, is not knowing what the next story is going to be about or what the next story holds or exactly what you're reading half the time. So I did want to give you a little bit of something, but not too much, because I feel like that's just something you guys have to check out for yourself if you feel into it. So let me give you guys my overall thoughts and opinions now. Sometimes anthologies or collections of short stories, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like they can be very hit or miss for me. Sometimes they feel like they don't flow correctly. They can feel very separate from one another, so it feels like you're reading very individual stories, which you are, because, you know, sometimes the same author isn't writing them, or sometimes the author just changes up their writing style a bit for one short story. But having a disconnect like that is kind of hard because it kind of disrupts the flow of reading for me sometimes with these kinds of books. So, you know, it's very hit or miss. It depends on the author, and it depends on the collection of short stories, if I'm gonna like all of them or none of them or only some of them. With this book, I feel like every story felt like its own individual story, but they all tied together very nicely, and they were very just loosely tied together enough that it made it feel like I wasn't reading completely separate things, but it also felt like I was separated enough from the previous story that I could kind of disconnect but then reconnect later on. If that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head, but sometimes I can't communicate it properly to you guys. So I hope that makes sense. I feel like if you struggle with short stories or anthologies, then you kind of know where I'm coming from. But yeah, that's the best way I can describe it, is they felt very individualized, but also tied together enough to not make me feel like I wasn't in the same universe, which I'm supposed to be, so that's a really good thing. So I highly recommend reading The Overbridge and Broken Rock before this book, because some of the stories do tie in to those book plots, and I feel like you would be a little bit confused if you haven't read those books before, just because I think it would be a little hard to understand, since the other two books do lay a foundation for the universe. So if you do want to pick up this book, I highly recommend checking out The Overbridge and Broken Rock first. I just think it'll help you fully understand the universe and kind of what's going on altogether as a whole. I was pleasantly surprised to see some of the characters from The Overbridge and Broken Rock in these stories. I really liked that touch. It was very nice, and again, it tied everything together. It made sense. It felt like you were in the same universe, which is a good thing, because you are. This is all tying in everything together to fully understand the universe that every book is being set in. I will say that a lot of the characters relate to other characters. So some of the stories in here will mention a character's name, and then in another story, a different character will have the same last name, so you can tell that they're relatives, or the same name kind of pops up in several of the stories, or a name will have popped up from one of the other two books. So it can be slightly confusing if you don't remember who's who. So at one point I did get a little lost for a second, and I had to go back just to make sure I was remembering who was who correctly. But I think once you get the hang of it and you fully comprehend who's who, and you can kind of keep track of all the characters, I think you'll be fine. It's just, there is a lot of characters half the time, so just to make sure that you know who's who from the other two books, who's in which story in this book, it takes a minute to fully grasp who's who and what's what, I guess. If that makes any sense. So I found the topic of bees to be very interesting. I don't know, I guess I don't like bees. Bees freak me out. I've never really liked bees. I know that they're very good for the environment and they are necessary, and for that I'm very grateful that bees exist, but they do freak me out a little bit. I think any bug just kind of, I don't, you know, insects, that kind of thing. I think it's because they like fly that kind of freaks me out. I don't know. I don't know why I don't like bees, but I found it very interesting that bees were very prominent throughout the story. And sometimes the story would go forever until the bee was mentioned, and I kind of liked that. I liked that the bee wasn't necessarily, you know, flying around all the time in each story, or it was just kind of in your face. I liked that it was very a background character. The bee was just kind of there in some of the stories, or it would just slightly be mentioned, so you wouldn't, if you were reading it and you didn't know it was about a bee, it wouldn't weird you out until you started reading more of the stories, and then you realized that there was a bee all the time, and you would kind of get weirded out because why bees, you know, like what about a bee? And I don't know, the title Don't Trust Bees is just funny to me because why shouldn't you trust them, you know? Like, it's, I don't know, when you look at the book for the first time and you don't read any of the stories and you read Don't Trust Bees, you kind of sit there like, don't trust them, why are they gonna hurt me? Are they bad? And then you read some of the stories and you're like, oh, that's why you don't trust bees. So I don't know, I thought the bee thing was very unique and very different, and I liked the addition of the bees. I thought it was weird, which is something that is very prominent in all of these books. Weird is a very strategic way that the plot goes. It's all weird, which is a good thing. I like weird horror. It's fun and it's different. I feel like with this book, I almost gained more knowledge of the universe, which I actually really liked, because when you read The Overbridge and Broken Rock, sometimes I felt like I didn't know what was happening, or I felt a little confused, and I kind of just took it for what it was. I was just like, well, maybe I won't get any more information. It's just going to be this is what it is. So I kind of just took it at face value. But I feel like reading some of these stories, I feel a little bit differently about The Overbridge and Broken Rock, because I feel like I have more knowledge, and I feel like I know a little bit more about the universe, and I can, I don't know, pinpoint certain things a bit better, which I actually very much like, because I like information and I like knowing why certain things are happening. So I'm hoping we'll be getting more information in coming books that will finally tie some things together and kind of hopefully get a full circle eventually in the end, because that would be very cool. I would like to be able to tie everything together. So I'm hoping that's what's going to be happening with every book. We're just going to slowly get more information and more knowledge and be able to piece things a bit better together. I honestly felt like some of these stories could have been their own book, like just individually could have been its own novella or whatever. I feel like some of them just had really good plots and really good ideas, and I would have read way more about some of them just because I really was captivated by the story and I liked where it was going and I was intrigued, and I could have done with more in some of the stories. I felt like some of them could be their own little novella or book or whatever. I would have liked a little bit more. Particularly The Strange Death of Elise, Southwood Horrors, and Murder Within a Circle. Those three, I don't know, there was something about those three that I felt very drawn to. I liked the idea of them. I was intrigued. I was enamored with everything overall, and I would have liked more. I would have liked more. And I don't know if the plan is to maybe expand on some of those. I would love that. I would love that. Or if it's just going to be left as a little short story like that. Either way, those 3 were some of my favorites and I enjoyed every second of them. So if I don't get longer explanations on those, I'm still gonna be happy that I got to read what I did about those because I thoroughly enjoyed them. Very interested to see what's going to happen in the universe next. I'm wondering if we're going to be introduced to more creatures and more monsters, because I feel like we kind of get introduced a little bit at a time to more and more. So I'm hoping in the next book we might see something new, maybe? That would be very cool. And I would kind of like to see where this all goes. How many creatures, how many monsters, are we like gonna have like a whole world of them? Because that would be interesting. So overall, I think if you like weird atmospheric horror, I think you'll definitely like this universe. It's very different from anything I've read, which is a good thing, but I think you have to be open to different types of horror, because this isn't like things that I've read. This isn't going to be your typical horror book. This is different. It's described as weird horror, so just be mindful of that. If this sounds like something you're into, I highly recommend checking out the universe in whole. Start with The Overbridge, then go on to Broken Rock, and then Don't Trust Bees. If you want my opinion, that's what I would do, just because I think it would make the most sense. I think it would make the most sense if you went about it that way. But I mean, I guess if you want to just jump around, you could. I think you might just be a little lost at some points, especially if you read Don't Trust Bees first. I think you would be just slightly behind and not fully aware what was going on completely. Yeah, if you want to check out this universe, I highly recommend it. I'll have my other videos on the other 2 books linked down in the description in case you guys want to check them out to see if you want to take a dive into this universe and see what it has to offer. I highly recommend, because I do enjoy these books and I enjoy piecing things together and just trying to find out exactly what's going on. So thank you again to Deep Arya for sending me your new book. I was very excited to get it and very excited to read it. So that's going to do it for this book review. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It lets me know what kind of content you enjoy from me. That way I can keep providing you with that kind of content. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We can become friends and talk about makeup, horror, books, movies, all kinds of things. I do a lot on this channel, so hopefully there's something for everyone. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday with a new video. So, bye!